40 years ago, the Cuyahoga River, as it winds through the Cuyahoga Valley National Park, 22 miles, was probably at near its worst phase in its history, in its 1,600-year history. It was loaded with debris, and oil slicks were on the top. There were not very good regulations on discharges from municipal treatment plants and industry. And so the river, before the park got here, was pretty much a mess. When we look at how people looked at the Cuyahoga River about 40 years ago, what we note is the history that they had with their river. And from the time industry moved into the valley, people looked at the river as a place to carry away waste. And at that time, even up in the headwaters, except for the very far headwaters, the river was quite abused, and people dumped things regularly into the river. It was sort of the culture that the Cuyahoga River had. And it wasn't just the Cuyahoga, it was most rivers. People learned to look at the river as a place where they did not want to be because it was a place that carried away waste. When the Clean Water Act came into being, the Cuyahoga River, as it runs through the national park, did not meet any of the standards of the Clean Water Act. It wasn't fishable, it wasn't swimmable, and it violated many of the chemical parameters. Then we started getting better sewage treatment in industry and better sewage treatment in municipalities, and as we did that, it got cleaner. As a matter of fact, the most recent studies that were done said that most of the river that runs through the national park is now in attainment for aquatic life standards. And no one would have believed that was possible. I had a meeting with John Debo, and I said, you know, John, it would really be wonderful if in celebration of this first River Day, we would get those cars out of the riverbank that are just downstream of your building here. And I said, it's always bothered me. Every time we paddle that section of river, I look up and I see there are these cars lining the riverbank, which were placed there by some farmer in order to stabilize the riverbank. And he said, really, so how many cars do you think there are there? And I said, I don't know, I think about 30, but I'll go check. So we went down to the river and we walked along as far as we could. It was very difficult to get to, and we counted 72 cars. And that was a couple of weeks before. And then on the day of the actual cleanup, when they had got the heavy equipment in, they removed 113 cars. So that was a wonderful celebration for the river. It was a triumph of River Day, and it was a great visual for the newspaper. One of the things that the park does very well is to work in partnership with organizations. And there are three very big ways that the park works with Friends of the Crooked River. One is every year they sponsor a cleanup for our annual River Day, and it's one of the biggest events. They usually get about 200 people out for that cleanup. Another thing that they do is we were very concerned about the riparian setback, the setback on the river for some of their farming practices. And so they did research and they set back all their leased farms now. They require a setback where those leased farms cannot plant next to the river. And that was in response to our concern about water quality issues. And a third way that we have worked together recently is on the Route 82 dam. There was a study done by the Ohio EPA of the remaining problems on the lower river. And it cited two things. One were those combined sewer overflows that I mentioned, and the other is dams. And there is a dam at Route 82 Station Road in the park that is managed by the park. and it routes water into the canal for recreational use. And so right now, Friends of the Crooked River, Ohio EPA, and a number of other stakeholders are working together to try to figure out a way to keep water in the canal and either remove or restore a clean passage to the river through that area. So we have been working with the park on a number of issues, and those are just 3 examples of how the park has been a very good partner to water quality.